How did Jesus Christ fund his ministry? You think about it. If you believe that Jesus is God, couldn't he just have made money fall from the sky and been the richest person to have ever lived? Yet he didn't. He lived as a homeless preacher that would travel around Israel proclaiming the gospel. And in Luke 8, we actually see how he funded his ministry. In Luke chapter 8, verse 3, it says, Joanna, the wife of Chaz, Herod's business manager, Susanna, and many others who were contributing from their own resources to support Jesus and his disciples. Look at this. Jesus' ministry was funded by very normal people that chose to give to him on a regular basis in order for him to work for God. And maybe you clicked on this video because you're finding yourself in a similar position. You're finding yourself in a position where you want to go out and raise support so that you can go and serve God. My first thought for you on that would be that Jesus did the same thing. So if it's good enough for Jesus, then it should be good enough for you. And actually, I'm in a similar situation as we sit here and record this video together. Next year, I'll be traveling to Malawi, Africa to be a missionary and to be serving the Lord there. And I am currently doing support meetings in order to raise support. I took a great course called Support Raising Solutions. If you're looking for something to get you started on this journey, I'd recommend that or reading the book, The God Ask by Stephen Shadrach. But I want to tell you today about how to practically fundraise for your ministry and give you some more scripture to support you on that journey. Before we talk about the practicalities, let's talk about a little bit more scripture. In Nehemiah chapter 2, we see something interesting. Now, Nehemiah lived in the time of the exiles, and it was actually the time when the exiles were returning to Jerusalem and to Israel. Nehemiah hears about the people that had returned, and he hears about the destruction that had happened in Jerusalem, specifically that the wall had been destroyed. He enters in to King Artaxerxes' presence, who was the king that ruled over where he lived because he was the cupbearer, and he's saddened. Then the king Artaxerxes asked him a question. He asked him why he was sad. Now, we can tell that Nehemiah has thought about talking with this topic with the king before, because he immediately answers with something that's quite wise. He says this, Then I was terrified, but I replied, Long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors were buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. The king asked, Well, how can I help you? With a prayer to the God of heaven, I replied, If it pleases the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. And then the king asked how long this would take and what he would need. Nehemiah gave him a rough estimate of how long it would take, and then he also asked for a lot of resources for the king to provide to build the temple. And what do you know? This king agreed. There's a valuable lesson here, is that we should be prepared before we ask, but then we should also ask people with conviction on what we're doing. In other words, we should honor them with the magnitude of our ask. So after I took this support raising class, they gave us a basic method that taught us how we are supposed to fundraise as missionaries. Step 1, our goal is to build a team of people that will prayerfully and financially support us every single month. And this is how we're actually going to pay our salaries. So in order to find this team, first we need to reach out to everyone that we know. So he encouraged us to make a long list of people that we've met, that we know, that our family knows that might support us, and then just begin reaching out. Reaching out with a short phone call that would sound something like this. Hey, how you doing today? I'm doing well. I called you today because I have exciting news about how next year I'm going to move to Africa to be a missionary. Typically they'll be like, whoa, that's super cool. And then I'll respond with, yes, it's such a blessing. Would you have time over this next week to sit down with me and talk about my ministry vision and financial goals? If they say yes, then I would answer, oh, that's great. And I would give them 2 specific times. So like Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. or Thursday evening at 4 p.m. Do either of those times work for you? Then we arrange a time, we go and meet. I present my ministry to them when we're meeting. It's not all about presenting my ministry. I want to get to know them, see if we're going to have a good partnership, and then I'll just ask them, and that's pretty much the whole method. I think oftentimes we overcomplicate this idea of how to raise funds, and I know for myself, my biggest hurdle at it has just been doing it. It's a fairly simple process, but it takes a while because you get a fair amount of no's, a fair amount of people that you think will support you won't. But then what's really cool is to have someone that you've never even met before walk up to you and say, God told me to come and support you. And I believe in what you're doing so much that I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and financially support you on a month-to-month basis. Having that happen to me has been one of the most humbling things that I've experienced recently. And if you're beginning this process of raising support, my biggest encouragement to you would be that God will provide. But also that you're not the exception. You're not just going to get some millionaire walk up to you and be like, poof, here, I'm going to fund your ministry and give you everything that you could want. It is a long process, but I think it's a worthwhile journey. And that's someone that's going through it and hasn't even made it to the end. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like. It really does help the channel. And if you want to read the whole Bible, then you can do that with me. Top link in the description to get started. See you back here later.